Hello, everyone. Jason Hagholm here, and it's that time yet again. Another edition of Jason and the Gentleman. And as always, to co host this show with me, we need the gentleman of mixed martial arts, the gentleman, Josh Hill. Josh, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Feeling better. Back to some training now, so I feel really good, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, I can see the smile on your face, and it seems like a little bit of an extra pep in your step as we sit here and talk before we went on air. But let's just get into it because a few hours ago last week we were all a little down on Bellator, wondering what was going on, why we haven't heard much from them. They're starting in April. Well, they're still starting in April, but they rolled out the red carpet and then some with a sea of announcements for the promotion with announcing not only a new television deal as they're going to be on Showtime for the foreseeable future on Friday nights, but they've got themselves a light heavyweight Grand Prix with 8 fighters, their champion Nemkov, but more importantly, if you're a fan of MMA, they made the Yoel Romero Rumble Johnson fight. And a bantamweight title fight, which I know that excites you, Juan Archuleta versus Sergio Pettis. But first of all, Josh, what did you think of the presentation of the announcement, how it went? Because I thought it really came out smooth, and just the buzz for Bellator. That's such a positive thing for MMA.
Yeah. I thought it looked great, man. I watched the press conference, and I thought they even just like the production value and the quality of it just got me excited and kind of had that old school feel with some new flair. So it's good. Showtime's huge. I always said before, I'm like, whatever station they put it on, whatever, as long as we can fight. But it does matter in the end, and Showtime's a great spot to be, especially with their boxing following, right? So they're huge into the boxing world. So that's gonna be awesome. And yeah, man, I heard Moro's voice on there, and I'm like, yes, hell yeah, I love Moro. He called my first Bellator fight. He also called my very first MMA fight. So he's been on. I've had him call my fights for years now, and to be honest, he's one of my favorite guys. I think he is like hands down the best overall commentary guy there is. He's done boxing, MMA, he's done pro wrestling, he's done it all, and he knows how to do it, man.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that seems like the foreseeable future. Mauro Ranallo will be the voice of Bellator because he's obviously the voice of Showtime Championship Boxing. So you get the crossover there with him, and I think Mauro does bring a level up for Bellator. Like just the excitement he gets in when they're with some of the fights, and just his track record, as you mentioned, like what he's done in MMA, like working for Pride,
Yeah.
Elite XC, Strike Force, and now Bellator. And 3 of those 4 are on Showtime. So that's a big thing. And it was kind of interesting as well that Steven Espinoza, the president of Showtime Sports, said that he's been in talks with Scott Coker since 2014, since Strikeforce went off the airwaves there. And obviously, they've got a long history. Kind of surprised it took this long to get to Showtime, but nonetheless, they're there now. And it just feels so much better than what the CBS Sports Network was for Bellator, because that was kind of this weird spot where they were happy about it. But you could tell had a big poker face on.
Yeah, I think probably the reason why it took so long because for a while there, Bellator was known as a promotion that kind of just took, ex UFCers and old UFCers and kind of used them to use their name, to sell shows and whatnot. But they've kind of gone away from. They still have a couple of guys that have some big names from the UFC, of course, but they're using a lot of their, guys that they've molded themselves, like McGee and Pitbull and Sanchez and many others. But yeah, I think that's probably why. I think that the roster is so stacked now that the amount of fights and the quality of fights that they're going to put on is outstanding. So I think that's probably why they cemented the deal now.
Yeah, I mean, plus they were kind of locked up as being the face of Spike at that point, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Spike had 10,000 other reality shows and reruns of Cops, and the only real major live programming they had was Bellator, and they were solid on there. But once the network kind of made the change over to as Paramount Network, where they're kind of trying to get away from the sports, Bellator just felt on this island, and then just got passed over to CBS Sports Network. But this feels like a proper home. They're back, got their feet underneath them, and and what they rolled out fight-wise as well. Let's get in that. They, finally we know when the other semifinal of this featherweight Grand Prix is going to be with Emmanuel Sanchez and Patricio Pitbull. And they got in there talking. Antonio McKee's going to fight the winner. That's April 2nd, and I think, what a way to start it off with what has the potential to be one of the more exciting fights for Bellator this year.
Yeah, and they have to get that one done first because it's been prolonged because of all the COVID stuff, right? So it's taken forever. But yeah, I think that's an awesome fight. Sanchez and Pitbull. I think most are probably picking Pitbull, McKee in the finals. I think that's what everybody probably wants to see. But Sanchez could pull off an upset. He's a tough, durable guy that's, he's hard to put away, and he's always kind of right there, and he's a high-level guy. So he could present some problems to Pitbull, but it is Pitbull. He's one of the best in the world. And a match with him and McKee would be fireworks, I think. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Bellator themselves are hoping for McKee and Pitbull, especially with the title being on the line. Like, regardless, McKee's fighting for the title because of where the situation is with Pitbull being in the semifinal. He has to defend the title. But, I mean, and they're still continuing the build of McKee, right? Like, he's fighting. He'll fight the winner of that, and that they've kind of been putting the rocket ship behind him a little bit. But I guess the biggest announcement fight-wise was this light heavyweight Grand Prix. Bellator's been falling in love with the Grand Prix, and this is the piece de resistance of all their Grand Prix so far. An 8-man tournament with, the likes of, their champion in Vadim Nemkov, Ryan Bader in there trying to, potentially get his chance to not only win, the light heavyweight title back, but win another Grand Prix as he won the heavyweight Grand Prix. You also have, obviously, Rumble Johnson and Yoel Romero, and they'll be fighting each other in the opening round. Like, Corey Anderson's in there, Leo Machida. Like, the talent level in this is unbelievable, and I think that they've knocked it out of the park with the matchups that they've made, and just the buzz from this alone I've just seen is really exciting. I can't wait for April to come for Bellator.
Yeah, I was hoping it was a bantamweight Grand Prix. Obviously, I knew it wasn't gonna happen. I would have heard about it, but if it ain't happening for my division, then this is something that I definitely want to watch, man, for sure. This is a light heavyweight tournament, and they do have a stacked group of guys in that weight class. So, like all those names you mentioned, especially everybody's, I think, going to be looking at the Rumble Johnson Romero one just because it's just two monsters in there. Going to be fighting each other. That one's just has fireworks written all over it, and especially at 205, Romero moving up a weight class, and then you got Bader's back in there. He's got him in a rematch actually with Machida, who beat him years ago. So that's kind of interesting. And Nemkov is fighting Phil Davis in a rematch for the title because Nemkov has his belt. And Phil lost the split decision in that fight, a very, very close fight. So he could have easily went the other way. So that's a good chance for him to get some redemption and get the championship belt back in the first round. So there, and like I said, Corey Anderson, probably the guy with the least notoriety is the guy Corey Anderson's fighting first, and I can't even pronounce his name. Russian guy. I don't even give it a shot.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister. It is a long name. One of the ACA guys, fought in Russia his whole career. But I mean, that just goes to show why this tournament is that much more interesting, right? Because sure, you have the UFC guys who they've picked up to stack up their light heavyweight division, being Corey Anderson, Romero, Rumble Johnson, Machida. Even though Machida's had a couple fights now in Bellator, but still, like, there's this dark horse in there that you don't know how it's going to work out, and I think that's what makes it so exciting. Plus, I like the timeline from Bellator here, where April is when it will start. The second round will be in July, and the finals are in October. Like, a very condensed plan. And I know they're, as you said, excuse me, their featherweight Grand Prix has taken forever because of COVID. Like, this thing started in September of 2019 and will end at some point in the second quarter or maybe third quarter of 2021. But I like the timeline of it, because if you get these things to drag out too long, it kind of loses its luster. But I think as well with the talent depth in there, like, fans are going to be glued to this.
Yeah, and that would be for me if I was fighting in that would be perfect. You know, you fight in April and then again July and then October. You're busy the whole year. You still have, 3 months in between each fight to recoup and train properly for it. So, and yeah, it's not too long where the build up for it kind of fades away. So I think it's perfect timeline. And it's they said they're doing one a year, so this is the one they're doing this year for light heavyweight, and they'll be wrapped up by hopefully October. I mean I love Grand Prix, man. I think it's ever since the Pride days, I just love the concept of it, the whole tournament style. Chael always talks about it as kind of the old school wrestling. You're in your bracket and you see who you potentially match up with, and usually in Grand Prix, there's always some kind of, like you said, dark horse, some upset. If you look at the Strikeforce one, where DC made his name, I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody really knew who he was, and he beat guys like Bigfoot and Josh Barnett, and this could happen in this one too.
I mean, heck, look at one of the first UFC upsets in a tournament. That was Steve Jenham as an alternate UFC 3 winning the tournament after Hoist Gracie got hurt from the chemo fight. But nonetheless, like I'm excited for it. And if I hear anyone slander Bellator for having all these ex-UFC guys, especially with the potential of a Rumble Johnson, Yoel Romero fight, shame on you. Like, yeah. I think this is one of them where we're going to put that aside and be like, okay, this is going to be an amazing fight. It's finally happening. And April 16th can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, and there's a difference between ex-UFC guys and just ex-UFC guys that they're just using their name, that they're way past their prime. You know what I mean? Like guys like using like a Shamrock and a Hoist, and no disrespect to them, they're just like obviously way past their prime. It just people want to see them because of the name, you know what I mean? But these guys like Phil Davis and Bader and Romero and Rumble coming back, obviously they're all still in their prime and top guys. So yeah, you can't shit on this one, that's for sure.
No, I think we're all like, did you see Yoel Romero? Like his neck was the size of like 8 people. Yeah, it was unbelievable how big he is as a light heavyweight. And I think it's perfect timing. Like he's had issues in the past at middleweight, making that 185-pound, especially when he's in a championship scenario. So why not move up to 205? And I think it's a perfect weight class for him. And he's about to, I think, like break through as one of the names now in the faces of Bellator.
Yeah, I mean, if he can get through Rumble, right? Yeah. So we'll see. Rumble's that guy that just power, man. You know what I mean? Like he puts people's lights out, and he's been out for a while. So I'm assuming, last time I seen him, he looked huge. Like, so I thought he was maybe even thinking about going heavyweight. But yeah, light heavyweight. Jacked Romero. That just screams violence.
It screams violence. It also has a little bit of that freak show aspect for how big these guys are going to be. So it kind of fits it, and it's kind of crazy, right? Like. Rumble Johnson started his career in MMA as a welterweight. Yeah, this dude is just gotten bigger. You can't stop his getting the girth on, and he's had success. And I'm just excited to see what he can do. And he's also one of the big unvariables, as you mentioned. Like guy that's retired, wanted to come back. UFC said no, and now he's in Bellator and just about to potentially give us.
Is that what happened? UFC said no to a comeback?
I believe that's what it was. They weren't super interested in it, so I think they let him go of his contract. But you know what? That's one Bellator they had to scoop up on, and they did the right thing, I think.
I don't know how you would let that go. I think he's a fan favorite, and kind of that time away from the cage, I think, would be a big build-up to have him come back.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just the pretty much, I mean, it was the highlight really of this unveiling for Bellator on Showtime. But I mean, they ended it off with something I know that interests you. Juan Archuleta defends the Bantamweight title against Sergio Pettis on Friday, May the 7th. I mean, that's got to get you excited knowing that this division's going forward.
Yeah, it's finally announced. I was wondering why. Like, I was pretty sure Pettis had the fight. I was just it wasn't announced, and I didn't know what was happening. But yeah, that's I'm so interested in that one. That's a good fight. Both guys are very, very good. You got Pettis. Obviously, he's been around it for a long time, and his name, he's a Pettis. That's all I can say. Yeah, he's good striking, pretty well-rounded. Spent a lot of his time at flyweight, but it looks like he's put on some size at bantamweight. And then Juan's just, he's a guy that's been at featherweight, goes down to bantamweight. So he's a pretty big bantamweight himself, and he said he's a good cardio, good striking, pretty decent wrestling. So I think that's an interesting fight, man. I'm, if I had to pick, I'm gonna pick Juan. He keeps the belt, but I'm hoping that I want to get on that card, man. It makes sense to put us on that card, maybe like a number one contender fight as the co-main or on the main card before, and also as alternates too. If something happens, right, I want to be ready to slide in there if there's a possibility.
Yeah, that's the other division, right? That Bellator is really gonna shine and showcase is this bantamweight division. So why not highlight everyone? There's yourself, Rafion Stouts, Patchy Mix, and a host of other guys at 135 in Bellator that are gunning for Juan Archuleta. And we heard your prediction there. Is that the guy you'd like to fight if you were given the opportunity to fight for the bantamweight title? Is Juan Archuleta is he the one that excites you the most, or just the title opportunity really?
I would like to fight him. I mean, as far as excitement goes, I mean, not really. Nothing in particular like makes me really want to fight him. Just that he's got the belt now and he's the man, right? So, Pettis, Pettis has a name. People know, obviously they know his brother probably more, but he's still a big name. So that would be a good one to beat if he was to come with the win. And then out of everybody else in the division, I would say, just for like namesake would probably be Gallagher, just because of he talks shit. He's Connor's teammate. If he wasn't Connor's teammate and like a kind of mini version of wannabe Connor, I don't think you'd have the following he does. But Bellator has done a good job at pushing him. He's like the face of Ireland and for Bellator out there. So that would be cool. That would be cool if I could do that one, fight for the title versus him in Ireland and take the belt in Ireland. That would be prime.
Well, yeah. Ideally, that's I think the goal. But I think if you got one of those two, like right out, if they were like, hey, you Gallagher on this May 7th show, obviously there's got to be some logistics figuring out with getting guys in from Ireland. But that's to me like the next step up for you in Bellator, right?
Oh, shit! If that was opportunity, bro, I'd take it in a second. But we'll see. I highly doubt that they'll give me him. And I've been hearing talks about him. He's fighting Patrick Mix. I don't know if that's for sure, but so yeah. There's obviously there's so many. Like I was supposed to fight Stotts already, so that might be one that they might try to reline back up as a number one contender fight. There's Leandro Higo in there. There's that Magomedov. There's a slew of other top guys, so we'll see who it's going to be.
Yeah, all in all, it's exciting times to be a fan of MMA, especially with all the great content. Like think of April alone, all this stuff coming out from Bellator, and One Championship's got all this their biggest shows for a North American audience in April, like with Mighty Mouse going for the flyweight championship there in one. Eddie Alvarez returns and a couple other title fights. Like to be a non-UFC fighter in the month of April. That's not only like this is one of the best things I've seen since like the Affliction and Elite XC days, but it's just so healthy for the sport right now, right? Having these other promotions kind of make some waves in with some solid TV deals and getting the exposure to other fans.
Yeah, for sure. Like we always talk about a lot of the North American fans, a lot of them are just the ones that aren't diehards. I guess you call them casuals that just kind of watch UFC and that's all they really follow. This might be an opportunity to catch some of those eyes maybe more, and draw them into other organizations that have the high quality fighters as well. But I do like how they're both Bellator anyway is doing 3 shows in April, and then starting in May, they're doing 2 shows every month. So, like I said, it's a slow start for them because they didn't have any for the first quarter of the year, but at least they're kicking things off with a bang in April, and it looks like they'll be rolling out throughout the rest of the year. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for cards.
Yeah, and as I say, like for not only Bellator finally getting the ball rolling, but you got Bellator in April, One Championship, PFL starts on Friday, April 23rd. Like there's going to be so much MMA once the spring hits that isn't UFC. Like this is, I think, the most North American viability of promotions that aren't the UFC in anyone's lifetime, really. Like and that's got to make all you like a fighter like yourself, who sure you're signed, but if you become a free agent, there's potentially other options, way more options than there were when you were a free agent the last time.
Yeah, absolutely. Right there. If you're a fight fan, you got the top four organizations, with UFC, Bellator 1, and PFL all kicking off and booming. And yeah, from April on, pretty much from spring on, MMA is going to be rocking in 2021, it looks like.
And then, that's nice to see as well, right? Because it was pretty much all UFC in 2020, because they were the first ones to get the handle on how to run like these bubble shows and
Yeah.
during a pandemic. And yeah, Bellator had their shows, but they took much longer to get there. PFL didn't even have shows, and one's just really for like the hardcore fan. But just to see all this stuff out there, it's great for me, and it makes me excited. And it's the health of the sport. I think that's what gets me the most excited, because this is the healthiest I think MMA's been in my lifetime, as I said.
Probably, yeah. I would imagine. Maybe I would think like maybe possibly when UFC was around with WC, and I think Strikeforce was around at that time.
Yeah,
But yeah, it
straight.
maybe yeah. Since those times, I would say it's from then to now. That's probably, yeah. You're right. Now it's peaking and it's at its all-time high, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited for it. I mean, congrats to Bellator. Things are going to look great, and it's going to be great. I mean, there's a lot of content for us, at least once April comes around, Josh, to talk about not just UFC stuff, which kind of
Yeah.
excites me as well, because there's so much more than that UFC bubble. But let's transition over to the UFC, because it was a big week for the UFC, especially with their main and co-main at the UFC on Vegas 18 show. And then they head to UFC 258 this weekend, their second pay-per-view of 2021. But let's look at UFC Vegas 18. We kind of dabbled at looking at it, but once again, Josh, the main and co-main events deliver and then some for the UFC. As impressive as Volkov was in the main event against Overeem, I want to talk about Cory Sandhagen and what he did to Frankie Edgar, because 28 seconds to hit what I think is arguably one of the best flying knees in MMA history, just on the footwork alone. I mean, like, you can't say enough about this guy, who his teammates and his coaches say this guy's a 10 out of 10 striker. And then he proved it by doing something that we've never seen anyone really do to Frankie Edgar, except, like, sure, Brian Ortega had a finish like that, but no one's done that in that short amount of time to Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, man, that was sad to watch because I'm a huge Frankie fan, but it's the game, you know what I mean? And yeah, that was just a perfectly timed jump knee. He's a tall guy versus Frankie's a short guy, so it works even better, less distance to go. Also, Frankie kind of, as he came in, he kind of changed levels just a little bit and kind of went into the knee, so it makes it just more, double that impact. I get what Frankie was trying to do. He was trying to, kind of put Cody or Sandhagen, sorry, on his back foot, and really kind of press him. Probably try to look for a takedown clinch wise, because he doesn't want to use his length. But in doing so, and rushing it that quick, Sandhagen that was masterful, beautiful timing, jump knee straight up the middle, right in the chin, and obviously put him out before he was hit the ground, right? So that was man, you can't ask for a better performance for not getting touched, not getting hit once, and then landing a beautiful highlight reel walk off knee. I mean, it's against a legend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if Joaquin, like last Cory Sandhagen fight was the Marlon Moraes fight, right? But if it wasn't for Joaquin Buckley having the knockout of the year, we'd be talking more about his spinning wheel kick knockout of Marlon
Yeah.
Moraes. Like that, like two back-to-back knockouts like that is something we haven't really seen from definitely a bantamweight, but it's something we rarely see in the sport. And right now, there's no denying that Cory Sandhagen will fight the winner of Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling after the March pay-per-view, UFC 259. Like,
Yeah.
I just am blown away by his performance and just the footwork. Like, I'm still stunned. Like, how much footwork was going on not only from Cory but Frankie. Like, there was so much movement, and then to just stop, pause, and pop to hit the knee. Like, that was just a thing of beauty. Like, one of the best knockouts I've seen, like, of flying knee knockouts, because this sport's had some. Where would that rank for you, Josh?
That's right up there, man. Yeah, I think like I'm assuming thinking of in Sandhagen's corner, Frankie's gonna try and press, and he's gonna try and put the pressure on you. You could probably look for a takedown, but also Frankie's striking's more boxing esque. So and to do that, you have to get in a little bit closer, right? So to be able to throw that knee, it might be a little bit more readily available instead of someone that stays in long and kicks a little bit more. But yeah, man, that knee, I'm out of the top of my head, I would say number two probably, and I would put it right behind Masvidal. You know what I mean? I still think that's 5 seconds, runs across the cage, flying knee. I don't think that will be beat for a flying knee finish.
No, and I mean, Jorge's is more impressive because of the stakes it was at, and just it really put him on the map. I
Yeah.
just think like Cory's is more impressive because there was all that scrambling going. Like Jorge just had to run right across and knew what Askren's game plan was, going to try to shoot for the takedown, and they timed it up. Like to me, I'd put Sandhagen's a little bit just above it, just on the technical side of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really loved. I just was blown away at the footwork by not only Cory, but Frankie was doing all this movement as well too. Like to line him up for that perfectly, it's just a thing of beauty. Like the other flying knee I'm thinking of is sure it's running across the cage, but it was Jose Aldo on Cub Swanson in the WEC days, which was a title eliminator, and he hit him with that knee and finished Cub in like 6 or 5 seconds. Like that's something you don't see every day, and you haven't seen since, obviously.
Yeah, I forgot about that one actually, and to do that to Cub, he's a hard guy to put out. So, but yeah, I mean Aldo, man, one of the best ever. But yeah, I mean it's all just opinion, and they're both spectacular. I think like the Masvidal one, it was more of just not giving a shit. Literally,
Yeah.
runs across like that could easily have been a takedown. You know what I mean? If he had just kind of kept his head eyes on him a little bit and seen it coming to step aside, or or if he missed a bit, hit him with the thigh, it could easily been a takedown. So to do that and risk the takedown against a guy that is trying to take you down, could easily have went the other way. But yeah, and the Sandhagen one, you're right. To line up a guy like Frankie that moves so well and so much and very unpredictable, that was very, very impressive.
It was very impressive, and now Cory Sandhagen is gonna wait in limbo to see what happens between Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. He wants the belt, and I'm just also impressed with like Sandhagen wanted this fight. It was supposed to happen at the beginning of 2020. Has to wait a whole year, but it was worth the wait to get a finish like that. And then moving on to the main event where Alexander Volkov looked unbelievable, picking apart Alistar Overeem on the stand-up against one of the most decorated strikers in the history of MMA. Like, to me, that's the most impressive we've seen Volkov look in his UFC run.
Yeah, he looked bigger than usual. I don't know if I was, is it me or he looked bigger? Yeah.
He did. I think he put on like 20 or 15 to 20 pounds.
He looked way thicker, put down some meat on him for sure. But Reem, I mean, I love Reem. It just he plays the game a lot where he kind of waits on the outside. He shells up quite a bit, which I'm not necessarily against a heavyweight because he's been knocked out so many times, right? So he'll do the tight shell and come at you and let you swing, and he'll kind of block majority of them. But he did wait way too long on the outside versus a guy that's 6'7" with a reach of I don't even know what it is, go gadget arms. So I think he waited too long out there and he started getting hammered on it, and I think that one shot broke his nose, and I think that was kind of the end of it. And I think he was just kind of mentally beat from that point on. And Volkov just kind of every time I got near him, he just touched him, and it was just kind of the start of the end for Reem, unfortunately, in that one.
Yeah, I mean, it got a little difficult to watch as the fight, progressed. And, thankfully it was stopped mercifully by Jason Herzog, the official. But, like, that Volkov definitely puts himself right in the running for, a dark horse to get a UFC heavyweight title shot because, like, if he can stuff a couple takedowns, I know Curtis Blades kind of exposed his takedown defense when they fought, but, him putting the mass on and just his boxing, like, you don't pick apart Alistar Overeem like that, right? Like, that was really impressive. I don't know, like, this Volkov to me looks like a world beater. Like, I had a debate with some people, like, I don't think that Volkov beats Stipe Miocic. So I'm like, I think he does, especially just with the power that he hits, right? Like, he's younger, he's fresher. I think that Volkov would put away maybe a Miocic. Not to discredit Miocic, but I just think he does.
It definitely has the possibility to. It just I think you didn't see Reem shoot at all. He's never been a big wrestling shot guy. He does like to get things from the clinch and get takedowns that way. So it would be that's where I see Stipe, getting the upper hand as far as that, because he is a durable, lighter heavyweight, and he does mix up his takedowns very, very well. So that would be the indicator whether or not he could do it. But yeah, man, if Volkov used it, like that's why I hate when guys that have these tools they don't use them. Guys like that don't use their range. These long legs, these long arms, and when they sit there and they fight like short guys, it's just like, man, you're wasting so many advantages you have. But in that fight, you could see it. He used it to his advantage and used his range to pick apart Reem from the outside. And if he does that, man, he will be difficult for a lot of guys in that division, because I don't think there's anybody his height anymore in that division. I think he's the tallest. I mean, Francis is a freak, but I don't think he's nearly as tall. And I mean, John Jones would probably be the other one when he goes up, because he's 6'4" or whatever it is, but his wingspan is like 100. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, but yeah, he's got these freakishly long arms. So I mean, and it's John Jones, so he's a nightmare for anybody.
Yeah, it seems like the winner of this fight that just happened in Volkov will fight the winner of the end of February, where we have Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Cyril Gahn, and we also have Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis that are going to fight. So kind of a mini little contenders battle going on there. I mean, I know UFC wouldn't want to make that Blades fight again, because I know Dana hated the Blades-Volkov fight just for how much wrestling Blades used and whatever, but it was the key to success. I mean, we know Dana's feelings on wrestling, but nonetheless, I could see them maybe making a Cyril Gahn Volkov fight for, I wouldn't say number one contender fight, but on the verge to getting there.
Yeah, those matchups could definitely work. I think you'll see. My prediction is Gahn, man. I think he's going to be a contender. So I could definitely see Gahn winning that next fight, and it could have Volkov and Gahn maybe for a normal contender down the road.
Yeah, I'm super blown away by Cyril Gahn. A guy's been in fighting for titles since his first ever pro fight, like in TKO. So he's a special type of contender. But we'll get there when we get there. And the only other thing I want to mention of the show last Saturday, Clay Guida, 15 years in the UFC and looking the best we've seen him since the Pettis fight 10 years ago. I don't know what he's done to change, but I want to see that Clay Guida fight the contenders and upper-comers up that he wants to fight at 155 pounds.
Yeah, man, I was happy for him. Clay's super, super nice guy, man. Just a pleasure to train with too, an alpha male. And yeah, I was happy to see him win. A vet, everybody knows who he is from his crazy hair and his fighting style. He's a cardio freak, man. He does not get tired, especially 39-year-old guy or 40, whatever he is. Yeah, he just doesn't get tired. But in this fight, he didn't. He's usually, a more wrestler grinder, take you down, scrambles. But in this fight, and brawly too, usually. But in this fight, I thought Johnson would be a problem for him, because Johnson's been in there with the who's who and has some good wins over some top guys, and his boxing's very, very crisp. But Clay, I think it was just the threat of the takedown so much. With Johnson, Clay was able to land some big shots, big overhands, a couple straight rights, and in that first round was outstriking Johnson, and then kind of mixed it up and used the wrestling to win the remainder of the fight. But yeah, I'm happy for him. That's a big win for him for sure, and everybody loves Guida.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just more impressed. 15 years in the UFC. Guy debuted in 2006, is still on the roster. Never had a verge of being cut. I mean, he's a promoter's dream, and good for him, too. Like, he's been in there, had some highs, had some lows, but he still stuck it out and is looking to be as competitive as ever.
That's pretty rare to see that in any organization, any major league organization, any sports organization.
Any job.
Any job, yeah. Most jobs now, it's like you change careers 8 times in the span of 10 years. But it's you see a lot of fighters come in the UFC or any big promotion. They a lot of them kind of go like 0-2, 1-3, 1-4, and they're kind of they're off. But to stick in there for that long and be in he never was a title contender, but he's been in that top contention before. And have some big wins, like a big win over Pettis, like you said, and those wars they have with like Diego, Yeah, man, he's a guy that's been in there and done that, and he's always kind of puts on a good show and is able to put 15 years in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we're all so happy for Clay, and I do want to see him fight some of these up and comers at 155 because that Clay Guida, I think, would make it a rough night for anyone that's on the verge of breaking through to being a serious title contender for, or into that top tier of the lightweight division.
Yeah, and I'm sure those, lesser known guys or up and comers would love to, if I was one of those guys, I would love to get a name like Guida. I mean, it's an opportunity to beat a guy like that with such a big name. So I'm sure that there's easily matchups there that, both parties are asking for.
Yeah, I'm sure. But as we continue the train on, Josh, we got another pay-per-view. It's UFC 258. The welterweight title is finally being defended here. Kamaru Usman against former teammate in Gilbert Burns. I mean, this was a fight that's supposed to happen last year, but unfortunately, Burns got COVID, and that kind of derailed everything. Yeah. So, I mean, Usman then defended the title against Jorge Masvidal on short notice. He looked really good in that fight, as the cardio effect of traveling halfway across the world, take the fight on such short notice, kind of caught up with Masvidal. But Usman's starting to put a run together like another version of George St. Pierre. Like, I'm starting to see some similarities in like how they start their fights and how he grinds you out. It may not be sexy, but it gets it done. And he's looking for what, like his third, fourth title defense here against a real good guy in Burns.
Yeah, the most interesting aspect for this one for me is their former teammates. Yeah. So they've put hours in the gym together. They know their strengths and weaknesses. They've probably sparred together numerous times, so they've probably got the better of each other here and there. But we all know, Usman's, he's a freak athlete, super, super strong, explosive, hits hard, but his wrestling's his dominant tool. Gilbert, great striking, great jiu-jitsu, probably his least, I'm not saying it's bad, it's good, but his least weapon of choice would be his wrestling game. So we'll see how it kind of fits against the Usman. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Usman takes him down. Will the threat of submissions, will he catch him to submission? Will he sweep him? Things like that. Or if he stands on the feet, who's going to get the better of it there? I could see it being a lot of clinch work. I know a lot of people probably won't want to see that, but against the cage and a lot of, wall wrestling and things like that. I think Usman will probably have to do that, especially in the early rounds, to kind of try and tire Gilbert out and kind of make him carry his weight. But I don't know who to predict in this one, man. It's a tough call. I'm gonna stick with the champ. I'm gonna say Usman wins the decision.
Yeah, you know what? It's always tough in these title fights to pick against the champion. Like, the challenger has to have a lot going, and don't get me wrong, in the challenger here in Gilbert Burns, he's got a lot going for him. Like, he thoroughly dismantled Tyron Woodley, former welterweight champion, in their last fight. He finished Damian Maia in like the first round, which that's unheard of. But I'm still like wondering, because I just find Usman finds ways to turn the fight his way, whether it's using his wrestling and stuffing, the submission attempts and whatnot. And I'm still wondering some of these lingering effects of what COVID would have on Gilbert Burns, because that, even though it was a while ago, you still don't know what those effects happen if it's sitting in your, still some degree, I guess, sitting in your lungs, going to those deep rounds, like that could affect you. I don't know, like, if it gets into a striking battle, you tend to lean Burns, but we saw what Usman can do if it becomes a stand-up war in the fight with Colby Covington. Like, Usman can surprise you in so many ways, and he's a jack of all trades, master of none, as they say. But I tend to agree with you. I'm leaning Usman by decision.
Yeah, I think just based on their last couple of opponents, Gilbert has looked good, but he also, beat a Tyron Woodley that I'm a Tyron fan. I think he's a great fighter, but he hasn't looked like himself in the last couple of fights at all. He's very gun shy, kind of timid to pull the trigger, just not letting it go like he used to. So I don't think that's the same Woodley as we've seen, in his prime days when he was a beast. But that's, I'm not taking anything away from it. It's a big win. It's a huge win for him. And then, Damian Maia, an older Maia, and striking was never, one of Maia's big things, that it didn't even get a chance to go there. Again, a big win for him, not taking anything away from him. But what Usman did with Masvidal, who I know is on short notice, but who's just a savage. You know what I mean? And a guy that, his striking is top notch. And then the fight with Covington, that was the one that impressed me the most
Yeah.
because Covington, he talks a lot of shit and he's, crazy, but he's a good fighter, man. And the wrestling in that fight and also the exchanges that they had, that was a war. So that one impressed me a lot. So that's what I tend to lean towards. Is why I'm gonna pick with Usman as for the win.
Yeah, I just think Usman right now is creating a legacy that, very few fighters get the opportunity to carve out. And I think he's on the verge of that. I think Burns is still like, will get back into this spot eventually. I just think Usman's just not the time for him, not the opponent to break on through to the other side, as the Doors would say. But nonetheless, I'm excited for this fight, like, because it's been building up for a while that was going to happen. And yeah, as you said, like, being fighting a guy that used to be your teammate, like, that's got to be a little bit psychological for both guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't really had that in my career. I mean, I had a one time where I trained with a guy about twice before I fought him. So it wasn't like we didn't know each other that well. And then the only other thing I would say is the Ultimate Fighter, training with
Yeah.
guys there that you can eventually fight. But yeah, it must be weird to be a former teammate where you put in many, many rounds and you kind of have that build a relationship with. So that's got to play a factor as far as, but it's again, he knows this, he knows this, he knows this, he knows this, so it kind of goes both ways. So, yeah, I mean, it just makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah, I think as you said, we both agree Kamaru Usman's going to win. I mean, this is a card that's definitely more for the hardcore fan to buy.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't been trying to market Kamaru a little bit more. Nonetheless, though, co-main event, Macy Barber returns after a torn ACL to take on Alexa Grasso. Macy was, still on the verge of trying to be the youngest female champion in UFC history. But, I mean, she did have a roadblock, not only in the torn ACL, but she lost to Roxy Modafferi, which was arguably one of the biggest upsets of 2020. And, now we get to see her back in there against, an always tough, durable Alexa Grasso.
Yeah, that's a cool fight, but I think it's a pretty shitty co-main event, to be honest. It's, you know what I mean? But I mean, yeah, it's a good fight, for sure. But yeah, it's always interesting to see how somebody comes back after an ACL surgery. Back in the day, that's a lot of time that's a career killer 10 years ago. But what they're doing now, like, guys are coming back 6 months after and they're looking just as good as they were. So we'll see how that fight goes. But yeah, she needs a win to kind of bounce back from that big upset.
Yeah, and there's another women's flyweight fight as well that's kind of interesting. Miranda Maverick, Jillian Robertson. Robertson's coming off the loss in her last time out, where Miranda Maverick looked fantastic on the UFC 254 card, where she got a win within like the first or second. She got a doctor stoppage as she hit a devastating elbow that cut her opponent's nose like right in half. And Miranda Maverick is someone I would definitely keep an eye out for. Like, yeah, it was the Liana Jojua fight back in UFC 254, but this is a girl that's, putting her time in, fought in Invicta countless times, fighting, a very tough Jillian Robertson. I think this is a sleeper fight on this card in Miranda Maverick and Jillian Robertson, because Jillian's coming off a loss, and she usually bounces back after she is coming off a loss.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll be a good one. She's a Canadian girl, right? Born in Canada.
She is.
Right?
Spends most of her time in Florida, but she is a native of Niagara Falls, actually.
Yeah, my neck of the woods now.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's a good fight, man. It's anytime someone has a loss, they usually come back one of two ways. They're more timid and they kind of defeated them, or they bounce back even more better and aggressive. So I'm assuming that will be how Sheila's going to come out of the gate. So yeah, that makes for another interesting fight. The women's, obviously they're pushing the women's on this card for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this card did take a hit with, I think its original co-main event was Chris Weidman, Uriah Hall, which is a rematch. But Weidman tested positive for COVID, and today they just lost a bantamweight fight of Pedro Munoz and Jimmy Rivera, as I believe.
Oh, no, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, this card does get affected by that, losing that kind of a fight. But, there are some sleeper ones. Brian Kelleher, Ricky Simone. Ricky just fought a month ago back on Fight Island, picked up a win there. Brian Kelleher had himself a nice 2020. And, Bobby Green, Jim Miller's two OGs of mixed martial arts that'll throw down and put on an exciting fight. And as well, Diego Lima versus Bilal Muhammad. Like, the prelims are really good on this card. So, if you're, wanting to tune in and watch.
The prelims are better than the main event, other than that.
Yeah.
Card,
I think that's the consensus all the way around. But I am very intrigued in that main event as we broke down of Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. I guess the other, solid fight on the main card would be Kelvin Gastelum, Ian Heinisch. Like, Gastelum's always been a solid contender at 185. Probably so far the only guy that's really pushed the champion at 185 in Adesanya. And Ian Heinisch, such an interesting story. And, finally getting, a big fight here. He had 2 fights with Brendan Allen fall out due to injury and testing positive for COVID and whatnot. So finally happy that this will get to take place. Hopefully, let's knock on wood. Nothing happens to stop this one from going down on Saturday night.
Yeah, from what you mentioned there, man, I'm looking forward to the main or the prelims way more than the main card for sure. But yeah, anytime Gastelum's fighting, he's
on the pay-per-view.
Oh, is it on the pay-per-view? Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, and it makes sense that the Weidman Hall was the co-main. So okay, that makes a bit more sense now. But yeah, regardless, I mean, some fights I'm gonna watch them, and there's some good ones on there, some bets, some up and comers, and a championship fight. So it's a good card.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be tuning in as I usually do, but I'm just kind of. I mean, you can't anticipate a card following a Conor McGregor pay-per-view to have the same kind of buzz, but not that much buzz going on for it. So I am interested to see what a card headlined by Kamaru Usman again can do without really, a villainous heel or someone with a personality like he's fought in his last 2 fights can do pay-per-view wise.
I mean, Conor sells himself more than anybody and better than anybody for sure, but it kind of depends what the UFC wants to do with you. You know what I mean? I really do feel that leading up to the McGregor fight, I must have seen I don't know how many commercials and ads for Conor versus Poirier too, right? With him laughing at the end, you know what I mean?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I've seen that so many times, but for leading up to this, I haven't seen anything. You know what I mean? I've seen not one, to be honest. And I didn't even really realize it was on this week until yesterday. So in that sense, I kind of think it's kind of who the UFC wants to push and kind of put their money and effort into. So I doubt it will do well, just for that reason. And as much as I think Usman's a killer, I'm sure. When he fought Masvidal, he caught a lot of flack, because they're calling him boring and he's, laying on him, whatever. But, you're fighting Masvidal and you're doing everything you can to win, and you have to go the route you have to win. You're not going to sit there and brawl with a guy that will, that's where his strength is. So, I doubt it will do well, but I hope it does.
I hope it does for Usman, and I know we're running a little long here, but I know UFC, look, the UFC has 2 champions from Nigeria. Obviously, Adesanya is the more flashy, interesting one, just in his fighting style and some of the wins he's got. But, if Usman turns this fight into any degree of the Covington fight, Usman has the potential to really be a star in his own right. And, Nigeria and Africa is a market they're really trying to get behind. There's another champion right there for you. Why not keep, potentially you could have a third with Francis Ngannou, winning the heavyweight title. But Usman's been, not the longest reigning champion of those 2, but get behind him. I think this guy's on the verge of having, a Hall of Fame worthy career. 1 loss in his career, and that was, his 2nd fight. This guy knows what it takes to get done. Is it sexy at all times? No. But you know who had a lot of fights like that? George St. Pierre, and he's one of the greatest fighter of all time in the history of MMA.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that for sure. You're absolutely right.
All right, Josh. Well, thank you for, as always, spending your time with me, breaking down some exciting news for not only you, but MMA as a whole with what's going on with Bellator, and recapping last week's UFC and previewing UFC 258 this week. And before we let you go, once again, plug your social media where people can find you and follow you, because you may have a fight announcement coming up soon, getting showcased in May. Hopefully, let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, hopefully, man. We'll see. Maybe April, maybe May. I'm hoping no longer than that. But yeah, at Gentleman J Hill on my Instagram always. And yeah, hopefully a fight announcement soon, man. Get this ball rolling.
All right, Josh. Well, thanks again for once again hanging out. And for all you viewers out there, like, rate, subscribe. As Josh and I, we're here every week breaking down the news and everything like that. And once again, same bat time, same bat channel here. So for Josh, I'm Jason. Peace out. We'll see you next week.